Oh, hey there, folks. It's Dr. Franklin, and this is a mini lecture dealing with telepsychology and ethical considerations. In this particular presentation, I'll spend time defining telemental health. I'll also spend some time discussing three regulatory structures involved in the dissemination of telemental health, or at least should be considered. I will spend some time talking about beneficence and non maleficence, and privacy and confidentiality, and how these issues need to be considered, and these principles need to be considered in the context of the delivery of telemental health. And then finally, I'll spend the remainder of the presentation talking about a framework for considering telemental health with the client. So this particular presentation may have some relevance to burgeoning or growing practitioners. This presentation may also have some relevance to cyber psychologists interested in exploring different types of problems and variables connected to telemental health. Being able to communicate with anyone around the world signals a progress in technology that has not gone unnoticed by mental health professionals. There's a notable proliferation of online therapy, professional networking sites for therapists, continuing education, and sites that can help patients find a therapist. It's almost impossible for an individual or group practice to be completely devoid of a digital interface. There are a host of ethical challenges that come with the incorporation of technological developments into psychotherapy relations, some to include the following. Number one, how to navigate intersections of personal and professional identity online. Number two, how to interpret practice guidelines developed for face to face therapy when performing online. Number three, how to stay updated on technologies given rapid changes. Number four, lack of training in information technologies to prepare therapists for challenges that arise. For example, some of these challenges may include privacy issues, electronic security, legal implications, etc. In this mini lecture, I will discuss potential ethical issues that may arise. Telemental health is defined as the use of telecommunications and information technology to provide access to health assessment, intervention, consultation, supervision, education, and information across distance. Telemental health typically falls under the umbrella term telehealth, and telemental health is in the same area as telepsychiatry, telepsychology, teleneuropsychology, and other areas. APA in 2013 defined telehealth and added to the definition of telepsychology, and that they focused on how telepsychology refers to the provision of psychological services via electronic communication technologies such as text based email, chat rooms, text messaging, and non text based telephone and video teleconferencing. Mobile applications are to be included as well. Now, some terms that fall under the umbrella term telepsychology include cyber therapy, e therapy, internet therapy, and online therapy. Synchronous communication refers to interactions in which two parties are communicating with each other in real time. Asynchronous communication refers to communication whereas two parties can leave messages for each other that can be received and responded to at a later time. Telemonitoring can be synchronous and asynchronous as well. In asynchronous telemonitoring, the patient is monitored and feedback is delivered via email, internet, cell phone, and automated messaging systems without face to face contact. Some therapists use standalone technology, and this type of tech is typically the tech absolutely necessary for e therapy to occur. Other therapists may use tech to augment the session, and this may include using such tech as email, phone communication, and social networking sites during face to face encounters. E health and M health were terms introduced into the literature that indicate the rapid technological innovations and their wider use in healthcare. M health was introduced in 2003 in response to expanding mobile communication technologies. E-health and telehealth are at times used more interchangeably, but it's important to note that e-health is not limited to remote healthcare, that is, healthcare over a distance. When considering legal issues related to technology use in mental health, there are two primary regulatory structures that are available for consideration. Number one, the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. This is sometimes abbreviated as HIPPA, HIPAA. This maintains that service providers must employ reasonable precautions to ensure that the patient's digital privacy is protected. Mental health professional, Mental health professionals should follow HIPAA guidelines when assessing the risk involved in the use of various hardware/software and network connections. The second regulatory framework is Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act. This is sometimes abbreviated HITECHA. And this particular act may need to be consulted when therapists are responsible for entering data into third-party cloud storage services. If working with college students, one may also want to consider the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, which ensures students that their grades and other private information that the university holds will be kept confidential. Several professional organizations such as the American Counseling Association, the American Psychological Association, International Society for Health Online, and the National Board of Certified Counselors have practice guidelines that aim to put forth appropriate standards for the use of technologies for the provision of mental health services. I will aggregate and summarize these recommendations at this point of the mini lecture. Therapists must balance the principles of beneficence and non-maleficence. For example, if a therapist received a referral from an individual living in a remote area without many therapists, this could pose an ethical dilemma. On one hand, taking the patient on may be extremely beneficial because they may not receive therapy otherwise. On the other hand, if they are not a good candidate for e-therapy because of their presenting issue, then the therapeutic situation could do more harm than good. It's best for a therapist to do an in-person, face-to-face assessment of a client first to determine if they would be a good candidate for e-therapy. Some of the questions Gupta and colleagues thought that individuals should consider include the following. What are the person's presenting concerns? Number two, do they have access to the required standalone technology for e-therapy? Number three, do they have access to a private and confidential space? And finally, number four, are they able to communicate efficiently online? Individuals with personality disorders, suicidal ideations, thoughts and intentions, and individuals with psychotic disorders or homicidal ideations, thoughts, plans, and intentions may not be a good fit for e-therapy. In terms of privacy and confidentiality, e-therapy and online research has the potential to negatively impact privacy and confidentiality. Potential HIPAA violations, this is that Health Information Portability Accountability Act that I mentioned earlier, HIPAA. Potential HIPAA violations and informational technology vulnerabilities are apparent in informational notices, client waivers, etc. If a violation occurs, the onus will fall on the service provider. Therapists need to take steps to ensure their clients are provided with information that explains the limits of computer technology in the therapeutic process and the difficulties of ensuring complete confidentiality with electronic transmissions. After doing so, therapists should encrypt any transmitted client information, and physical devices need to be password protected. Some authorities even recommend certain hardware and software configurations in addition to providing bench test results for their software's performance. Practicing telepsychologists need to consider the ways in which boundaries may be violated in telepsychology settings. This is important because telepsychology and e-therapy occur in a shared space online where a client may choose to friend a therapist on Facebook or follow each other on Twitter. Searching for information can happen by either party and could bring increased potential for boundary violations. Lanin and Scott recommended therapists viewing their clients as being more local given the internet and for therapists to make sure that they set up their privacy settings to preclude requests and follows from clients. Drum and Littleton recommended 9 best practice recommendations, some of which include ensuring the privacy of non-clients and preventing unintentional self-disclosures, using professional language, and maintaining professional hours and respecting the timing of sessions. Lustgarten and Elhai in 2018 provided a well thought out summary of ethical principles, and they also emphasized 5 domains linked to competencies for technology use in practice and research. The domains they emphasized include legal, welfare, privacy and confidentiality, security, and boundaries. Some of the competencies they highlighted included maintaining an understanding of APA guidelines and patient legal protections as it pertains to the legal domain, recognizing external threats to patients when tech is employed for the welfare domain, assessing points of possible intrusion of privacy for the privacy and confidentiality domain, collaborating with patients participants to maintain security of devices for security, and outlining business practices for technology use for the boundaries domain. They also provide recommendations for how telepsychologists can meet those competencies. For the therapist with interest in telepsychology for their clients' benefits, Torres and Roberts at Stanford University suggest a framework for the ethical use of telepsychology in mHealth. They recommend a series of steps that can be used by the mental health service provider to enhance decision-making approaches for the use of technologies. They believe that the first question that should be asked is, would mobile technology provide a benefit to the therapeutic relationship? Though research supports an affirmative to this question, the therapist should consider his subjective view of the therapeutic alliance, goals, and his client's thoughts on the matter. The next question to ask is, are potential risks to the therapeutic relationship manageable? This harkens back to the question I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Depending on the client's presenting concerns, this may not be the best approach because he or she may be impulsive or have chronic mental health conditions with frequent relapse and recurrence of symptoms. All of this could really impede the therapeutic process in an online way. The next question to consider is, was adequately stringent informed consent obtained? This is important to ponder because sometimes a client may give informed consent, but it may not be a strong endorsement and it could be connected to symptomatology they've exhibited in the past. The next question to ask is, was there a discussion of confidentiality concerns? The risk associated with social media companies needs to be discussed initially and then ongoing throughout the therapeutic relationship to ensure that the tech is meeting both the needs of the client and the therapist. Finally, the last question is there a mutual alignment of mobile technology with treatment goals and expectations? A continuing dialogue needs to be held about the last question as well, since the technology has to be a suitable tool for assisting the client in meeting their